Blanquette de veau, or an old-fashioned veal stew in a white cream sauce. We will be using bite-sized chunks of a veal shoulder, which I purchased from Harris Teeter for quite a bit of money. You can also find veal chops that are also cuts from the shoulder. Either way, veal's kind of expensive, so this is probably a special occasion dish. Our first step is to cover the veal with water, bringing it to a boil and then skimming off any scum or impurities that come to the surface. This is a standard first step procedure when you're dealing with a veal stew, and often you use it with other stew meats as well. The next step is to prepare the bouquet garni, and we start by peeling the carrots because carrot peels sometimes can have a bitter and off-putting flavor. We're also going to prepare what is known in French culinary terms as an onion pick, where we stud an onion with some cloves. Often in the classic method you actually stud a bay leaf to the onion with the cloves, but we're going to include the bay leaf in our bouquet garni. Always remember too that parsley stems can be used in a stew in a bouquet garni, so don't throw them away. So for our aromatics, we have celery, leek, carrot, parsley stems, garlic, onion pique, and some fresh thyme to flavor our stew liquid with. We're going to bundle all this up and truss it with a string to make removal after the stew is cooked simpler and less problematic. I'm adding a little white wine at this point just to give a depth of flavor and a brightness to the dish. Also, I'm putting in a little chicken stock, which will also add to the flavor of the sauce. And then we're going to cover with water up to the top of the bouquet garni. I'm also adding a little white pepper and salt at this point. We're using white pepper because this is a blanquette. It's a white dish, so we're kind of sticking with the theme. At this point we want to bring to a boil, reduce the temperature to a simmer, and then cook for 40 minutes or so or until the veal is just tender. While the veal is simmering, we're going to go ahead and quarter our mushrooms and prepare our pearl onions. Over medium heat, we're going to melt some butter and lightly saute our mushrooms, being sure to season them with a little salt and pepper. We'll add a little lemon juice later to brighten up the flavor, but it's important that we don't brown the mushrooms because, again, this is a blanquette. It's a white dish. Remember that lemon juice as an acid is a flavor enhancer. We're not really looking for a lemon flavor, but what we want the lemon juice to do is to bring out and enhance the flavor of the mushrooms. Wine and vinegar also work in the same manner. Test the mushrooms for tenderness, and when they're tender through, go ahead and remove them. They will get some additional cooking in the sauce later, so it's not necessary that we fully cook them now. Reduce the cooking liquid and then pour over the mushrooms so that we retain the flavor that was in the butter and the wine and the lemon juice to add into our sauce later. In the same manner that we pre-cooked the mushrooms, we're going to do the same with our pearl onions. I'm using frozen pearl onions here because I had them in the freezer and because frankly I was too lazy to go get the raw onions and peel them, etc., etc. Adding a little wine and butter and seasoning, we're going to cook the onions until the liquid evaporates and the onions are glazed with the cooking liquid. We're looking for them to be just tender again, and we're going to set them aside for later. The reason we are pre-cooking the mushrooms and the onions rather than just adding them into the general stew is we want them to retain their mouthfeel and texture and not just become mush. When the veal is tender and can be easily crushed in your fingers, it's done, and we'll move on at that point to making the sauce and finishing the dish. So you remove the bouquet garni, the onion pick, and the herbs, and then we'll also remove the veal and build the sauce. We start by straining the cooking liquid into a saucepan so we can begin our sauce production. I always start out by tasting the cooking liquid first just to see how salty it is, because we're going to be doing a reduction. It's going to get saltier as we reduce it. We're going to add in some cream and we're going to begin our reduction. And when using cream, it's a standard practice to add in just a little bit of nutmeg. It's a background flavor or note, and we don't want it to taste like nutmeg, but if the nutmeg wasn't there, you would notice it. It is a flavor enhancer when used with cream. Bring the sauce to a boil and reduce until the cream will nap the back of a wooden spoon, and by napping I mean you dip the spoon into the sauce and then draw your finger across it. If the viscosity of the sauce is such that the cream doesn't close up over your finger mark, then that's called napping. We tempered the egg yolks with a spoonful of the hot sauce liquid, and now we're incorporating them into the sauce over low heat. At this point we do not want to bring the sauce to a boil again, otherwise we will scramble the eggs. As the egg yolks cook, the sauce will become considerably thicker and richer in flavor. Taste as you go and add lemon juice if necessary, if the sauce needs to be brightened up just a little. Here also we want to correct the final seasonings with salt and pepper as we get toward the finished product. We season as we go, but we also want to season at the end so that the final product is just what we want right before we serve it. I'm using this coquette as a serving vessel, and we're going to add in our mushrooms, onions, and veal that we had prepared earlier, along with the chopped up carrots from the bouquet garni, which will make a nice garnish to the finished dish. We want to strain the sauce to remove any potentially scrambled eggs and make for a nicer finished product. Over low heat, we're going to gently reheat the sauce and heat through the veal and the garnishes of mushrooms and onions and carrots to prepare them for serving. Be sure not to allow the sauce to boil or we'll scramble the eggs. Once the sauce is up to temperature and off heat, we're going to mount it with butter. A mount en beurre is the culinary term, and that will give a really nice finish to the sauce. But again, we don't want to boil the sauce or the butter fat will separate. We'll have a mess. So this is very important that this is done at a very low temperature and right before serving. So just think about it. cream sauce reduction, enriched with egg yolks, and finished with butter. I mean, it don't get no better than that, man.
Get in my belly!
You see the sauce naps very nicely now. See that? Very viscous and unctuous. Absolutely delicious. Right before service, we're going to add in the fresh parsley so that it retains its bright color and bright, crisp flavor. We're going to serve this old-fashioned blanquette over riced cauliflower, since this is a low-carb dish. Traditionally, you could serve it over rice or over noodles, but this is just absolutely a fantastic dish to prepare, and the cauliflower brings its own depth of flavor to the party. I hope this video will inspire you to try and make this old-fashioned blanquette de veau. Truly a French classic, and done our way, a low-carb classic. Thank you again, and enjoy. For other videos and recipes like this one, please come to cheftylermacon.com and check us out. That's cheftylermacon.com.